This is Kim Wehle, Simple Politics, and I want to welcome once again Anthony Scaramucci, the Mooch, to our program. And this, I think, is our third time chatting in a few short weeks, right? We have so many things to talk about.
I'm just happy I logged on appropriately. I'm like so thrilled with myself right now.
I would say that was probably the smoothest log on ever.
Of the last three logons.
Of many guests. So we're quick learners here. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, there's lots to cover today. How much of I'm sure you have a lot going on, and I don't know how much I watched today.
Sure, I watched it. Unfortunately, like you, I'm rubbernecking it. It's like a car crash, and so I'm sitting there trying to do my business, but I'm looking up, watching it. It's one of these more horrifying things to watch, frankly. But what made it completely horrifying is actually, this is all political, Kim. You know that, and I know that. You're a lawyer. You're a trained lawyer. I went to law school, but we know enough about the Constitution and the process to know that he broke the law, and we know the evidence is overwhelming, but this is now a political decision by a group of lackeys, and that's basically what's going on, and it's sad.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, because you are a trained lawyer and obviously very smart and know a lot about this stuff, how would you grade? Let's just start with the impeachment manager's case for people that maybe weren't able to watch. It's the charge is incitement of insurrection. For viewers, that's a crime under federal law. It's a crime under state and local law, which makes this First Amendment challenge kind of silly, because if the First Amendment banned it, we wouldn't have criminal laws making it illegal. But what did you think of the case that was laid out by Jamie Raskin and his team of impeachment managers?
So, and I don't want to be critical of the last impeachment, because I think the facts here were so crystal clear. Not saying the last impeachment wasn't, and Adam Schiff did do a good job, but this was a textbook case of an elucidation of fact, a legal argument, and a persuasive case for justice. And I got to tell you, I thought Jamie Raskin, if you are listening and you're in law school, or you have a moot court competition, or you're a litigator, you should watch what he did, because what he did was he laid out, without any real super emotion, some drama, but very articulate, very objective underpinning of facts. And he built the case the way you and I used to build a geometry proof in the 9th grade. He said, okay, this is the case, the laws, these are the facts, this is what happened, here's what's irrefutable. And did you watch, I'm assuming you did, the 13-minute film?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, for me as an American citizen and somebody that totally loves our country, and, obviously, I've taken on death threats to speak out about the nonsense that's going on, but I totally love the country. To watch that, Kim, I have to tell you, I was emotional watching that. I mean, you had people die during that, and you had elected officials' lives were in danger from a group of people that thought they were doing the president's bidding. He told them to get up to the Capitol, and he was organizing it. And remember, as Jamie pointed out very clearly today, it was a plan from November 3rd. It was probably planned actually prior to November 3rd with the expectation that they were going to lose. But from November 3rd on, there was a disciplined premeditation to spark and inspire that insurrection and to incite it.
Yeah. So what parts of what your former boss, Donald Trump, what parts of it really stand out for you as making the strongest case? Because as you know, what we'll see from the defense side is, listen, all he said was, that he used some inflammatory language, but politicians do this all the time. They say stuff, and things have gotten more out of control in the last few years. You were a White House communications director. What is it about what Donald Trump did that crossed the line between just sort of big-chested, politician speak and a crime? But of course, impeachment, just so everyone understands, we're not putting anybody in jail. This is really a personnel decision, but something that is a high crime and misdemeanor that justifies basically firing a president.
Well, I mean, there are several things weaved in. So let's just start with the fact that he did not accept a legally binding, honest, and free, fair election. So he broke precedent with that. He's the first president in American history that literally did not want to accept a legitimate election. Secondarily, he told what Joseph Goebbels would say, Kim, is the big lie. He said that the election was fraudulent and that he won by a landslide because he had several hundred people, if not thousands of people at his rallies. And so that was evidence to him that he won by a landslide, which there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to support that. People on his side, fellow Republicans who voted for him, said, no, I'm sorry, I can't say that. Okay, we didn't even get into what he did with the Secretary of State of Georgia because it's not relevant to this specific case, but he's got another issue down there. He was trying to strong arm him into giving him votes that he didn't win. Find me the 12,000 necessary votes to flip the state. So what Jamie laid out was there was a pattern of unethical behavior, a pattern of amoral behavior that breached his oath to the office and breached his oath to the Constitution. And then you have the secondary issues of the abuse of power. And one of the great abuses, of course, is the manifestation of that crowd and ginning up that crowd and trying to inspire that crowd to perform an insurrection. And then, of course, you've got his acolytes like Steve Bannon saying all hell's going to break loose tomorrow, and this person saying it and that person saying it. And then you have this web of contacts coming from inside of the Trump campaign organization, which they raised several $100 million to create and foment this activity. And so, it's a textbook case. This is a guy who didn't accept the election. He fomented violence. He inspired violence. He incited it. And again, I think it's very important to draw this distinction for all of your listeners. It's not just what he said on January 6th, because I know the president very well. He'll parse things. You can listen to what he said on January 6th and say, oh, and go peacefully, go peacefully.
Right. That word peaceful, I think,
yes,
was seized
because
on, right?
and now because he wants that split participle and that level of binary confusion to hang people on. That's why people say, well, he's not a racist. He said X, Y, Z, or he did A, B, Z. And my point is, well, guess what? He may in fact be a racist because here's the body of evidence that supports it. But he always does that. My friend Michael Cohen said that he would always do that. He always will speak in a way that gives him a little bit of cover. But if you go through the 10, 12-week process from November the 3rd to January 6th, his actions dictated a disavowal of our Constitution, a disavowal of our norms in our society, a non-acceptance of a peaceful transfer of power, which has been accepted by every president since we had free elections in our country. And so, yes, it's not just what he said on January 6th. It's everything that he did leading up to January 6th. And that's where I thought Jamie did such a good job today. And by the way, I don't know if you caught his attorneys. I was laughing. One of the attorneys was dressed like a mob attorney. He's like, look, I'm working for a mob president. I might as well show up in pinstripes, in this pinstriped outfit. It's fine. He's entitled to dress any way he wants. But they both admitted that the case was so overwhelming, they got befuddled in terms of how they were going to respond. And then they basically more or less said, okay, look, we don't really have a great response, but, this is politics and no one's going to convict him. We've got a bunch of crybaby cowards on the Republican Party. No one's going to convict him. So we're going to basically say nothing. And he's going to get away with this. And we're going to move on into next week. And that's basically what happened today.
Yeah, I mean, we do have law students that watch, and it is the second round of lawyers were abysmal. It was a snooze fest, right? Boring, boring, boring. No really meaningful legal defense, no meaningful factual defense. And frankly, when they got to law, I think they kind of crossed some ethical boundaries for lawyers to say, listen, to ban him from office would be unconstitutional because you're disenfranchising future voters. I mean, it's in the Constitution that is one of the remedies if someone's convicted of impeachment. It's expressed in the Constitution. As you know, terse document, not a lot of stuff in there. 6 times impeachment is in there.
But remember, Kim, that was the same defense they used last time. They said, well, it's not for us to make him guilty and throw him out of office. There's an election coming very shortly, and let the people decide the election, let the people litigate the election. So they don't have a lot of room. Let's imagine that you and I were on his defense team. You and I got assigned to it as public defenders, and so we had no choice but to defend him. There's only 2 or 3 moves on the Rubik's Cube trying to find something to say. One of them is he's out of office. Now, you and I both know that's specious, and it's not reliable based on the fact that the articles say, how would you prevent somebody from going completely rogue on the society 6 weeks, 12 weeks after the election? So we both know that. And then the second thing you would say is that, well, your only punishment to him is that he's not going to be able to run again. And why would you deny the right of the American people to make that decision one way or the other? And the answer is, well, it's a deterrent. Remember, justice, as you and I learned it in law school, is based on a lot of different things: due process, procedure, a presumption of innocence, of course. But then when justice is remedied, there's many factors. One of the factors is the actual person. It's the person's crime and the person's record in the society prior to that crime. But pursuant to the punishment is also, what is the deterrent? We need to set a message to people that if you're going to do things like this, our society is going to mete out justice and provide a solution, which is a punishment for sure, but also a deterrence for people. And trust me, it works on Wall Street. When they lock people up for insider trading and they put them in jail and disgrace them, people look around and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to have anything to do with that.
Yeah,
I don't want that impacting my family.
You have kids. I mean, it's the same thing with the 6-year-old. There has to be a consequence for jumping on the couch, or they jump on the couch. I mean, and Donald Trump isn't that far afield from that. But actually, I think
I just want unfortunately, you're talking to like a super lenient.
Me too.
I was just tied up upstairs. They set fire to the living room. They were going like this around me, and thank God my wife cut me free so I could join this Instagram live. But I just let you know, I'm a total pushover as a parent. So I had to get that out
there. No impeachment of children.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no articles. There's no even Constitution here. I mean, there's nothing going on here. There's no checks and balances in the Scaramucci family. I just want to make that clear.
I get it. Well, but let me just say, I think the strongest argument is one that isn't made, and it's more on a factual basis than a legal one. And it gets to your point that Donald Trump is someone that knows how to parse language, right? And the argument is, if this were a criminal trial, and actually I looked up the jury instructions for the federal crime of insurrection, and there aren't any out there that I could find, because I think it's just not charged because it doesn't happen. That's what's so rare about this. But it requires a showing of intent, like most crimes, okay? So it seems like maybe an argument would be, listen, this is Donald Trump being bombastic. He's done this for 4 years. He did it before. He never had any intention of inciting that riot. He just thought they were going to stand out and put pressure on the members of Congress. So maybe the riot happened, and that proof is there by the videos. But unless we talk to the people around him, unless we talk in the moment, unless we talk to his campaign staff, who, as you indicate, there's public evidence that they communicated with the organizers, and maybe even money exchanged hands from the campaign to the organizers, unless we hear from people like Governor Larry Hogan, who said, listen, I was trying to send the National Guard, but I was sitting there for 2 hours. The Pentagon wouldn't let me do it. The Pentagon was under Donald Trump's control. Until we get a sense of his talons on this, his tentacles on all of this, he could just say, look, it's Trump being Trump, which I think has been the defense from day one with Donald Trump, with one abomination after another. What do you think of that, particularly knowing him?
Well, I think that knowing him, that would be a move that he would make to, hang on a few words here and there,
So that's deliberate? That's
100%. 100%. I can take you back through the 5 years. He always does that. He did that in Charlottesville. He screwed up by saying there were very fine people on both sides. He went over the line there. Then if you go back and look at the transcript, he tried to pull it back. That's why guys like Scott Adams and those guys always, oh, well, you've got to read the whole transcript. You could literally see him driving the Thelma and Louise car over the cliff and then hitting reverse to try to pull it back onto the cliff. That's what he does. And
like the Roadrunner, right?
Like the Roadrunner. He also did that with the Vladimir Putin. Remember, he said, well, I meant to say that I don't agree. I said I do agree. Remember, he was trying to split that, and then the lights went off in the cabinet room while he was trying to say it because he was in a lot of trouble.
And the quid pro quo Ukrainian call, same thing.
Quid pro quo. Then he tried to walk back the S-hole nations comment about the immigration story.
Right.
And so he's always doing that. Somebody's saying on the feed that he moves the goalpost. I think it's a very interesting point. He moves the goalpost because he knows you're a loyal person. And he knows, okay, you're a loyal person. You're going to try to do the right thing to prove your loyalty to me. Let me move the goalpost. Okay, you accepted that? Okay, that's fine. Let me move the goalpost. And he keeps moving the goalpost. He put poor Rudy Giuliani. He's
poor
like
Rudy Giuliani.
the goalpost moves so far. He's in like a barrel, naked, going over the Niagara Falls. Okay, and so he did the same thing to Michael Cohen. The goalpost got moved into a totally other stadium, and Michael ended up in jail. And so what happens is you're looking at it, the first 2 or 3 moves, you actually move with him. You're trying to prove your loyalty. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. He's totally manipulating me, and he's trying to get me to do things that I don't want to do. You say no mas, bam, you're fired immediately.
So you think that, I mean, do you agree that could be a line of defense that maybe would make sense to people? Listen, he doesn't have the intent. He's just being Donald Trump.
And the other line of defense would be the hanging on those words. Again, if you and I were the public defenders, we'd have to hang on those words. We'd say it was just him being him.
Fighting words.
Fighting words. He's not really calling for violence. It was over-interpolated by these people. It's not his fault that these people did that. They have their own free will. But the rebuttal is, yes, they do, but he's the president of the United States. He's in a senior leadership position, and he was literally calling on them to, quote unquote, fight. And a result of which 5 people died and 1 police officer. This is a supposed movement that is pro police officers. They smashed the skull of a police officer with a flagpole and killed him as they were mounting an insurrection to invade the Capitol while they were chanting, kill Mike Pence, the vice president, kill Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. So you know you've got a tinderbox before you. You're standing up there on January 6th striking matches. Okay, you're also telling him you're going to go with them. I'm going with you to do this. We're going to give up a fight. And listen, I don't like talking about his kids and stuff like that because they talked about my family, and I've sort of made a blanket statement not to talk about his family, but I say, go look at the transcripts of what the kids said. They're not compelling. They're not good facts for the Trump family or for Donald Trump himself. And if you look at the videos of them partying in the tent to the song Gloria,
I know
they think that some, to quote Steve Bannon, bad SHIT is going to go down, and look out, holy hell's going to break loose. This is going to be great for us. And what did they think was going to happen? Okay, the best case scenario was they were going to pressure those lawmakers, and he thought, and he obviously thought this because look at his Twitter feed before it came down. He said that Mike Pence is a disgrace. He didn't have the courage to do what needed to be done.
And that was after they were calling for him to be hanged.
Yes, after they were calling for him to be hanged. And obviously he sent out secondary tweets honoring these people. He said that he loved them and that they were special people. It was time to go home. But then he put out secondary tweets that he was honoring them. But then, of course, we're going to split the participle again. And he got to one of the rooms in the White House and he read off the teleprompter all that language of denunciation. That's Donald Trump. That's not to bring the horoscopes into this thing, but he's like the classic Gemini where there's 2 things going on at the same time. But it's 85-90% bad Donald Trump versus the stuff that his lawyers tell him to do 15% of the time.
So let me ask you this, knowing him, and I've wondered this for a long time. when people say he's so intelligent and so brilliant and just knows how to manage the media, knows how to split the participles. I mean, you're obviously a brilliant person. We know a lot of smart people. Is that accurate, or is he a narcissistic sociopath, or is he some combination of both?
So I would go with the third choice. He's some combination of both. He is intelligent, and he may have a learning disability. He may not be a great reader, but he does pick up things. I'll tell you something that Richard Branson said about Donald Trump in 2013. I was visiting Richard at his home in the Bahamas, or I think it's the British West Indies. And Richard just got slayed by Donald Trump in the reality television wars among billionaires. His Fox show fizzled out. Mr. Trump's show went on to have a 15-year run. And Richard said, well, I'm diagnosed as having attention deficit, and I also have dyslexia. And so when you have those two issues, it doesn't mean you're not smart, Kim. It just means you're assimilating the information very differently than other people. In some cases, you're more aesthetic. In other cases, you're picking up cues or judgment. He once said to me, Richard, I don't know how to add. I can't look at the numbers. They look in reverse to me. So I have to have good judgment, pick an unbelievably, impeccably trained accountant that I can trust to explain the numbers to me. And
so you're saying Donald Trump has dyslexia or some kind of learning disability?
So I don't know, because I can't diagnose him,
right.
But I'm telling you, he acts like a person. If you just look at the way he's reading the teleprompter, or if you look at the way he lacks curiosity of an intelligence briefing, or he doesn't really like reading. And the big joke always was that you're a best-selling author, but you've never read a book. That was always a joke. And when he was a more casual guy, he would roll with the punch of that joke. Now everything is a nightmare, and the guy can't handle any type of self-deprecating humor. But my point I'm making is having those disabilities doesn't make you not intelligent. He's absorbing and assimilating information. He is a smart guy, but he's got these sociopathic, narcissistic tendencies, and he has an amorality about him. He'll run you right over with the car. He doesn't care who you are.
Rudy Giuliani. That's compassion. The compassion thing that's missing in sociopaths.
Doesn't have that. Could care less about you. You're a tool in his toolbox. The minute he doesn't need you, he'll discard you. But he's also manipulative. He's cunning. He's charming and gregarious. He'll lure you in.
That's the thing.
And he'll put you in the honey trap. Now he's got you, and he says, okay, let me see what I can squeeze out of this person before I discard the person. And so, it was obvious to people at the Trump organization. It was obvious to some building contractors. And frankly, I made a mistake. I've owned it, and I'll have to own it for the rest of my life. I made a mistake. I went to go work for him. I thought I was being a loyal Republican. I tried to do what I thought was right for the country. From our conversations, I'm very close to General Kelly. General Kelly fired me, but we became very close friends. We've done speaking tours together. And General Kelly would say the same thing. If he was on your show tonight, he would say, when you're doing it, you're trying to do it because you love the country. You think you're going to be serving the country. When you get into the situation, you're like, okay, this is so much worse than I thought even possible. How could it be this bad? And then however bad you think it is, it goes lower the next day, and it goes lower the day after. And so, there was great frustration for people like General Kelly, Jim Mattis, H.R. McMaster, Rex Tillerson. You would find that anybody that didn't have a tie to Mr. Trump, that was a political tie where they needed him, or it was a monetary tie that they were going to make money off of him, they somehow either got ejected like an Austin Powers villain, that would be me, or they left. I say, because anybody that didn't need Mr. Trump was able to talk to him in a way that the other sycophants weren't willing to do, and he didn't like that, and so he would discard you pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's pretty typical.
And that's why he can't find a legal
right?
team. That's why he's now got two jamokes who are trying to make names for themselves. They're going to be able to say that they got the president acquitted, and there'll be an asterisk. It'll say, we had no case, we had no articulation of a case, we brought forth no evidence, but because we are loaded with cowards in the Republican senatorial caucus, we were able to get this acquittal.
So take us, there's some reports out of CNN, other places say that he was outraged, really angry watching his lawyers make the non-case for him. What do you think? Take us into that room, and also, from your experience with him, what is he doing? What has he been doing since January 20th? And how is he taking this week, do you think?
Well, look, I talk to people that are close to him, and I would say that he's anxious. And I would say that he's trying to compartmentalize that and hide it by all the golfing. That's a way of cloaking. Look at me, laissez-faire, I'm out there playing golf. But I think people close to him see an underlying anxiety. He's got this issue to deal with the impeachment. If he can't run again, that's a monetary loss for him, because he'll say he's running again just to raise all that money. I think that was probably the most profitable thing he's ever done in his life, was raise several $100 million in 12 short weeks off an election lie, an election fraud, which was not factually based. He raised several $100 million. So he knows running for president, and they may not win the presidency or even get the nomination, could be worth, 9 figures to him. Mm-hmm. So he's worried about that. He's worried about his standing if he's convicted, that there's a level of disgrace that will come with that, not just historical disgrace and legacy, but over however many years he has left on planet Earth, it will impact his ability to maneuver and influence people. And then he's got, of course, these issues that you and I have talked about in the state of New York, as well as the IRS potential issue with the Trump organization. So there's a whole flurry of activity coming that he's also quite anxious about.
So I've been doing a lot of TV, radio, viewer calls, C-SPAN this morning. So I just want to throw out some things that I've been hearing from regular people, viewers that call in and have questions, and just get your sense of things. Because my guess is if these people had them, other people have them, these kinds of questions. And one is, wait a minute, if Jamie Raskin and the others are correct, that it's basically a catch-22. You can't impeach if there's a pending election, and you can't impeach once there's already an election. All of a sudden, we have no impeachment clause. Is there any other way of holding someone like Donald Trump accountable for wrongdoing in office? What could happen? What's left? What levers are there left to pull, and is it feasible that they'd be pulled? Because as you talk about with precedents and deterrence, this is not just for this president. This is for anybody else who steps in those shoes. And some people who have expertise in despotism say, listen, this mantle will be picked up by someone who's more skilled at being a dictator. That's what some people have said.
Well, I agree with that. And so, it's interesting, I always tease that Donald Trump is a great unifier, Kim, because he's managed to unify me and Rick Wilson and you with the left of our society. We're sort of centrist, center-right people. And so he's a great unifier, and somebody that I've always intellectually sparred with but enjoyed my friendship with him is Professor Lawrence Tribe, who was my constitutional law professor 30 plus years ago.
With Barack Obama, right?
President Obama was after me. I was class of 89, he was class of 91, and he also had Ted Cruz. We could talk about that in a second if you want. But what Professor Tribe has always said to me is that this is going to require an amendment to the Constitution. If you have a nefarious, this was put together by honorable people that expected whoever rose to the office of the presidency would be honorable. And even if they did something objectionable that would cause them to be impeached, they would act with some level of honor in terms of the abiding to the oath of the Constitution. And by the way, if you go to Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon, who wasn't ultimately impeached, but if you think about the way they handled things, or even President Clinton, they handled things very differently than Donald Trump. They tried to follow levels of what the constitutional protocol said to do. So I do think there's nothing, to answer your question. You go look for it, but I don't think there's anything there. Lawrence Tribe couldn't find it. I can't find it. And I would also make the case to you that he immobilized the 25th Amendment because he had so many acting cabinet officials that if the cabinet convened, he could just start firing those people. Right. They weren't sanctioned or, codified or approved by the Senate, with the advise and consent aspect of it. And so
that was another
so he immunized himself from the 25th Amendment. So you have to look at this if you're a constitutional scholar, and you have to say, okay, what do we do here to correct for the event that we could get a sociopath. And oh, by the way, your point is well taken. I see the seam in the system. I'm an evil, malevolent person. Let me see if I can exploit this. And I'm going to take what Trump did and I'm going to do it more exponentially. And, here's one of his things is he lacks executive management skills. What he wanted, he didn't properly execute. It wasn't well conceived. But imagine if Kevin McCarthy was the Speaker of the House and he had an acolyte that was running the Senate. What type of a number would he have done on the American people to try to subvert the democracy?
Right. If the House wasn't in Democratic hands, completely different situation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or if the election had been tighter, right?
Yeah,
If Joe
exactly.
Biden hadn't won by those margins. I mean, there's so many ways this could have gone off the rails. But you've said before, the last time we spoke, you said you really do think there's going to be indictments against Donald Trump and
I do.
And so I mean that's not Congress. I mean the congressional levers of oversight have just been totally watered down. But can you talk a little bit more about why you're confident about that? I mean, because some would say, listen, that's horrific, horrible precedent, former president in an orange jumpsuit. I don't care what he did. That's unseemly. We don't do that in America. Joe Biden would never go for it. Out of the question.
Yeah, well, he may not end up in jail, but I see a scenario where they're going to him and they're going to get him and possible family members to accept some type of plea and some type of punishment. I do see that happening. If you said to me, is he going to end up in jail? I think that it's going to be very hard to put an American president, even one as nefarious as Donald Trump, in jail. If you're showing me the receipts that he was a paid operative of Vladimir Putin, then he's going to jail. So he's, like I said, he's either at best, he's a useful idiot for the Russian government, or at worst, he's a paid operative. And so, you have to tell me what he really is. But what happened on January 6th, which will be forever remembered, is a disgrace to the American people. It was incited by Donald Trump. And if you're looking at it from outside of America, people say, okay, that looks like Venezuela. To me, that looks like a third world country that's trying to be taken over by a despot. That doesn't look like the United States. And that was a successful weapons grade propaganda mission to despoil the United States optically to the rest of the world.
Right. I think that plays into the, sort of despots across the globe saying we're a joke. And another thing I would say, both, Republicans, Democrats, when I say Republicans, Trump supporting Republicans, the messages that I was getting on these call-in lines was, we're really upset about the fact that there was no serious law enforcement presence on the Capitol. I don't think people necessarily understood that Donald Trump in the moment was responsible for a huge federal law enforcement apparatus. But do you think that there should be some kind of an investigation into that piece? And if so, is that, I mean, this is of course not, a careful analysis or a survey or something, but the few people I talked to, it seemed to me that this was a place where there could be some cross-pollination politically, that, listen, we really don't want that to happen again, where people are crawling into the Capitol, smashing things, stealing things, threatening people. And 2 hours I was sitting on my couch like, where are the police, right? Where's the Secret Service? Where are the snipers? Where are the bomb sniffing dogs? Where? They didn't come for hours. Bizarre.
So, I mean, that is part of the conspiracy, right? People do believe that, he organized a sequencing of events, and you saw some of the guards waving the people in, and many people took the day off that day. So either they took the day off because they were supporters of his and they took the day off so they would be short-staffed, or they took the day off because they didn't want anything to do with what was about to take place, sort of a protest day off. But yes, I think he has to answer for that. And I think that there is the rub for me. Those Republican congressmen and women and those senators, men and women, they were in danger. And so the notion that there was a conspiracy afoot and there was a prevention of the National Guard being called, he delayed the National Guard. Kevin McCarthy begged him for the National Guard. So did Governor Hogan, and he delayed it. And it's the reports are anywhere from 95 minutes to 120 minutes, 1.5 to 2 hours. So I don't know. I think that reflects really poorly on him, but what it reflects more poorly on are those senators. So wait a minute, your lives were in harm's way. You were a hair's breadth from being hung or zip tied, taken as a hostage, or possibly killed by a
and
reckless
your
staff by a reckless mob. And we do know that the panic buttons were removed from many of the different rooms, and we know that they knew exactly where to go in terms of the unmarked room that Speaker Pelosi uses. And so we know all this, but yet, despite all that, you're willing to let him go for the politics of personal power and the politics of cowardly expediency. Okay, well, if you're willing to do that, that's a sad day for America. January 6th is a sad day, but your decision to let him off the hook is also a sad day, because what is the punishment? He's not going to jail, but he will be rebuked, and he will be disgraced, and he will be prevented from ever running again.
Well, and there's also the question, I think, of whether there were members of Congress that were giving pre-tours during a pandemic for some of these people that ended up in the rioting. So, I really hope the Biden administration and Congress, or some combination, has a 9/11 type commission to get to the bottom of it. But you know what, Anthony, some stuff that comes out could be ugly, not just for Donald Trump, for many people that I have no insight. I don't mean to be a conspiracy theorist, but it was such a spectacular meltdown. It was not just, whoops, we had an on-off day as law enforcement. I mean, having lived here for a long time, right outside Washington, they know how to do protests. They know how to do this, and they just weren't there. It's just that's the piece that really sticks with me.
Well, listen, I agree with you. So the question will be, where is the pendulum going? Is it going to go towards more of this? Or is somebody like Adam Kinzinger and Representative Cheney and somebody like Senator Romney going to build a coalition of people and say, okay, listen, we have to do this. This is in the best interest of the United States. And whether you get reelected or not, we have to do this. This is a protective thing for the United States. And let me reframe it for a second. Yeah. Let's say they voted anonymously and there was a secret ballot. I think it would be very high likelihood that he would get convicted. As long as they couldn't expose the names, these people would put them lights out, because many of them, by the way, want to run for president in 2024, and they want to remove Donald Trump from the playing field in any event. So there's a lot going on there. But listen, it's a disgrace what happened. And, well, you and I, other people like us, we have to speak out about it. I take a lot of flack. I take a lot of insults. Could care less. I don't care what other people. I don't care what other people think of me. I love my country. I love my family. I'm focused on my business, but I also know that we are in an existential crisis as a nation. And if we don't get brave men and women to speak out about this stuff in an hour of need, then what are we going to do? Remember what Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, bad people, they can act indiscriminately only when good people are meeting them with silence and meeting them with inaction. And so there's way more of us, okay, than there are of them. And so I just have to continue to implore people. And, I ran into somebody the other day. I was actually traveling out to Iowa with General Kelly. And the person said to me, thank you for speaking out, because you gave me comfort and you gave me a little bit of a ceiling above my head to also speak out. I won't name who the person was, but pretty, well-known person. I said, well, that's a very nice thing. Look, I'm just trying to explain to people we have to stand for something, and we have to stand for levels of civic virtue and levels of principle.
Well, the other thing I think that you stand for is being able to make a mistake or to own the fact that these are messy, complicated issues. And you can be a Republican, but not necessarily support Donald Trump, there are muddy gray areas here that we have to grapple with, and you can't do it in a way that ensures complete popularity. And it's that ambiguity, that willingness to deal with the messy, that I think we're a little bit stuck in. People are have these confirmation biases. I'm on this team, I'm on that team. I'm going to hold on to that team and look for information to back up my predetermined point of view. And I think, you know, your record here, your career is like, listen, I went one way, I realized I made an error, I went back to my integrity and my sense of who my values, and I'm just speaking my experience for myself and of you. And I changed things around. And I just wonder if there's a way we can have that conversation more robustly in this country.
Well, I certainly hope so, you know, but you're never going to win everybody over. And no matter what you do, there'll be a group of, you know, I get stung sometimes on TV. It was, oh, you supported Donald Trump, I've got no use for you.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. Or someone will say, well, you turned on him the minute he turned on you. And so, you know, you didn't stand up to him. It's not exactly true, because, you know, the week after I was fired, he was talking about very fine people in Charlottesville. And I spoke out against that. I said, this is completely wrong. He also, you can find tape of me when they were separating the men and the women from their children and putting them in cages at the border. I said, look, I want to support the president, but he can't do that. That's un-American, it's very bad for the country. I had a conversation with him about the Vladimir Putin thing. I said, you know, you're denouncing the intelligence agencies. You may not like Clapper or Comey, but you're denouncing people that have kept the country safe since 9/11, and it's leaving a bad stain on you. You can't do that. So people can say whatever they want about me. I know my truth. I've done the best that I can do as a person. I did make some mistakes. I should have listened to my wife. She, you know, she probably dislikes him almost as much as Melania dislikes him. I mean, she's up there. I mean, she's probably not as much. You got to give Melania her due. She's probably in the top position, but Deirdre's up there, and she was like, don't go work for him. He's a bad guy. Everybody comes out of that wood chipper somehow damaged.
Definitely.
And I'll tell your listeners what I did, which I regret, because maybe they can learn from what I did. I had my ego involved, and I had my pride involved, and I was seeing my personal narrative as somebody that grew up in a blue-collar family, got lucky enough to get accepted to Harvard, built 2 successful businesses, and there I was having an opportunity to work for the president of the United States. And so I was form-fitting him, and I was using a lot of cognitive dissonance to embrace that narrative. And that was a big mistake. It was an ego-based mistake, and it was a pride-based mistake. And when you put those two things into your decision-making, Kim, your intelligence goes down and your emotions go up, and it was a recipe for a disaster. And so we're here now, and you know, move forward and try to explain it to people, so hopefully they can learn from it. It's sort of a cautionary tale.
Well, and I have a blue collar background as well, and I do think I would venture to guess some of that maybe put you on the straight and narrow, or put you back on track, because it's really clear when you grow up like that what matters and what doesn't matter. And not everyone got off the track, right?
Right.
In Team Trump land, we now have so many Republicans that are now going to sell the country down the river. And I say that you know, not in a partisan way, but I agree. It kind of worries me that Larry Tribe thinks that we need a constitutional amendment to save democracy. But anyway, I'll have to think about that one a little bit more.
Well, you know, listen, I mean, his only point is that if you get a sociopath that's neutering the 25th Amendment, you're putting in all acting cabinet people, that amendment's that's not a living, breathing amendment if you do that, you know. And his point is that you got to be very careful on the abuse of power. You know, I mean, who's to say the next guy, hey, let me just pardon 500 people indiscriminately, regardless of what anybody thinks is appropriate in terms of measurement of the law.
Yeah, and then you also have a supine Congress that's not doing anything. And I made that point this morning and said, listen, I mean, if you're a Trump supporter, you have to say to yourself, are you okay with what happened on January 6th happening every 4 years with a Democratic president? And the response, I mean, the response was the whataboutism, well, you know, BL, Black Lives Matter. And, you know, that's a diversion. I understand you know, I have compassion for this sense of like, listen, this is my belief system, don't challenge it. But anyway, this kind of a conversation where we can hold both sides of it at the same time. I think this is part of the legal education. Talk about Ted Cruz and those others that went to fancy law schools that seem to have abandoned that training. But I think it's really valuable. So I won't take up more of your time. You could go back with your children.
I got a 1 o'clock appointment with Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo. So
1 in the morning.
I'm going to show my age here, Kim. I'm probably going to take a cat nap before I get back on the air.
Oh yeah, that's what we all do in COVID. Cat naps, cocktails, all of that. Yeah, no, I've got a 10 o'clock, so I'll be up as well, but not as late as you. But anyway,
Well,
thank you so
thank you
much.
so much for having me, and let's stay in touch. And thank you for coming on my podcast. You were terrific. We got a lot of downloads, so I appreciate you doing that for me.
That was great. Anytime. I love having these conversations, and so thank you again, Anthony Scaramucci, and thanks for our viewers for watching. This is Simple Politics with Kim Wehle. We will see you soon.